Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you're watching. This is Dane from NRL Rooms and Updates with my third video on the YouTube channel. Obviously something I'm wanting to branch out and get into a lot more and produce some quality and entertaining videos. There's not too much of this on YouTube, so I feel this is kind of fresh for our game, and I haven't seen too many people doing this sort of stuff. So with that being said, this is the 2019 NRL Predicted Ladder 1 to 16. Some considerations before I begin. Number one, obviously not everyone is going to agree with me. If I haven't ranked your team within the top 8, then I fully expect you not to agree. I respect that and I love the passion. That's what rugby league is built on. Number two, I've got 3 key criteria that I'm going to factor in, and I'm going to give each team a grade from E- to A+, and that is depth, potential, and star players. Factoring in that with how the team performed last year, and then a little bit of my opinion is how I'm going to come up with these rankings. Obviously, I've tried my best to be as unbiased and as fair as possible, and I think that's shown. I've left my own team, the Gold Coast Titans, well out of the top 8 because I want this video to be as honest as possible, and I want to hear your guys' top 8 as well. So after this video, go down in the comments, leave it on Facebook, Instagram, wherever. As you know, I always try to get back to you all, and with that being said, let's crack on with the 2019 NRL Predicted Ladder. Okay guys, to begin, let's have a look at our 2018 ladder. I don't want to have this up here for too long, so feel free to pause the video if you want to take a closer look at that. But here we can see our top 8 and our bottom 8, and now let's go through and discuss the changes and the 2019 predicted ladder. Alright guys, there you go. Take a look. Right there is my 2019 predicted ladder. If you want to pause this and have a closer look at that. But what I'm going to do now is go top to bottom and explain why I've given each team their rank on the ladder. So let's get into that. Starting off with the Sydney Roosters, I believe anything but another top finish and a minor premiership for these guys would be a letdown for the fan base, given their current roster. As you can see, for stars, I've given them an A+. I think that's justified, and I do believe they have the best roster in the competition. Potential, again, when you have A+ stars, B for depth, and your potential, I'm going to give them another A+ there, given they won last year as well. And for depth, I've given them a B, so some notable players that I believe won't be in their top 17. Ryan Hall, international winger, Brock Lamb, Lindsay Collins, Nat Butcher, and obviously they have a couple other great young juniors coming through. For my second pick, guys, I've gone for the South Sydney Rabbitohs. So I've given them a C+ for depth. Not the greatest depth, probably a little bit less than they had last year, but still enough there if injuries were to persist. For their potential, we've gone with an A. Obviously, the potential was there for them to win last year, and if Anthony Seibold, the reigning Dally M Coach of the Year, is still there in charge for 2019, then that definitely earns them an A for potential. And for star players, B+. They've got some great stars. Some might be getting a little bit on in their careers, such as Greg Inglis or Sam Burgess, but both still played spectacular footy in 2018, so I think that justifies them with a B+ for star players. On to number 3, the Penrith Panthers, a team that has been up in the top 4 or top 8 consistently for the last couple of years, but have been eliminated in the finals come semi-finals preliminary time the last couple of years. So this year I've given them an A+ for depth. They had their SG Ball squad and their reserve grade team both in semi-finals, as well as their NRL team, so they've definitely got the talent coming through their grades. Potential, I've given them an A. They have a star-studded roster and they can definitely go all the way in 2019. And for star players, also an A. Plenty of rep players through that side, and more importantly, plenty of future rep players coming through the Penrith Panthers development system. Rounding out my top 4, I've gone with the North Queensland Cowboys. Now, I understand this might not be a popular pick with the fans, but listen and hear me out for this one. For depth, I've given the Cowboys a B+. They have a lot of great players and one of the best forward packs in the NRL, especially with the signing of now Josh Maguire. Potential, I've given them an A+. And I've given them an A+ despite their very low finish last season, because I feel the Cowboys kind of lost their identity last season. They had one of the greatest players of all time return in Jonathan Thurston, and then they lost their current best player to injury, Michael Morgan, about halfway through the season. But when Michael Morgan was in charge in 2017, he took them all the way to the grand final, and he had a spectacular final series. put in Michael Morgan running behind the big meters that will be gained by Matt Scott, Cohen Hess, Gavin Cooper, Josh Maguire, Jordan McLean, Jason Tamalalo, Scott Bolton, John Asiata. They are all meter eaters. The amount of room and space Michael Morgan will have to operate, I believe that gives them an A+ for potential. And just to some of the names I've just said, for that reason we have to give them an A for star players also. Next for 5th place, I've got the Cronulla Sharks, a team that is no stranger to finals football. It will likely be Paul Gallen's final year within the NRL. For depth, I've only given them a C+ here. They're obviously hurt by losing a couple key players from last year. Potential is still there, however, so I've got to give them a B+, a very strong and a very experienced forward pack with Matt Moylan, Chad Townsend, and an excellent backline, including Valentine Holmes. The potential is there for the Sharks to rack up points on opposition teams. And for stars, I've gone B+. They've got a lot of great stars throughout their lineup. Next up, we have the Melbourne Storm at 6th place, and these guys certainly know finals football. With Craig Bellamy as their head coach, I expect they will still be in the top 8 this year. However, I do expect they will fall just outside of the top 4. Not by much, but I just don't see them achieving a top 4 finish as they transition to life without Billy Slater. So for depth, I've gone ahead and given them a B. They've got a lot of great young players in their reserve grade team that are such as Scott Drinkwater. They proved last year that they are NRL quality, and they're sort of just waiting in the wings. So potential, a B+. Anytime Craig Bellamy is the coach, and we're talking a team that includes Cameron Smith, the potential is right there to win a premiership. And for stars, I've gone A. They've got explosive backs and great forwards, and a star-studded roster from head to tail. For 7th place, I've gone with the Newcastle Knights. Now, I understand this as well will not be a popular pick, but again, hear me out. There's good reasoning behind my selection there. For depth, I've given the Newcastle Knights an A. Now, the Knights have a lot of great young talent and a lot of experienced talent that I don't believe will be in their top 17. If injuries were to occur throughout the season, the Knights have the option to either replace them with a young, up-and-coming star or an experienced cool head. An example for this I'll give you. If a forward is to get injured, they have the option to bring Jamie Buhrer in, who is a veteran of the NRL, as well as both Saifiti brothers. That's big inclusions into any NRL side. For potential, I've gone with a B for the Newcastle Knights. We're talking a spine that could potentially look something like Kalen Ponga, Danny Levi, Mitchell Pearce, and Mason Lino. Obviously, there's 2 great halves there, a very dynamic hooker, and probably one of the best fullbacks in the game despite only being in his 2nd year. For stars, I've gone with a B-. They don't have the most stars, but it is a well-constructed team from head to tail with enough experience, young players, young up-and-comers, all in the mix. I think this is the year Newcastle finally complete their rebuild and Nathan Brown takes the boys from the Hunter back to finals footy. Okay guys, now for our 8th team, let's have a look at the New Zealand Warriors. I believe they can continue to build on what they started last season. However, I'm still not 100% convinced that we can see the consistency required from an NRL team from the Warriors. And that's not my opinion. You look back in all of the Warriors' previous seasons, they have shown to be very inconsistent, which I was a little bit hesitant about putting them at 8th place. But I do believe with their stars being a B, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and Sean Johnson, who is being told he can look elsewhere, I think that will light a fire under his belly and we'll see a huge year from SJ. Potential, I've given them a B+ for that reason, really. If Sean Johnson fires, the Warriors fire. And depth, C+. Again, not the great depth, but enough to cover injuries if they were to occur. Okay guys, now for the tough part. The teams that I've left outside of the top 8. Now I need to make my reasoning a lot more clearer for these, and I understand that will be a little bit tough, but just try to bear with me for these last 8 teams, and if this is one of your teams. Brisbane Broncos, number 9. Depth, C+. I believe they will be tested a little bit with their depth in 2019. Josh Maguire has left the club. Sean O'Sullivan is their big half signing, but relatively untested within the NRL. He had, I believe, the one game last year, and he looked good. But it's very different between playing one NRL game and consistently performing throughout the NRL, and we saw that with Anthony Milford, who struggled last year. So if their halves continue to be a problem, and their forward pack was to uncover some injuries, then the Broncos, I can see them struggling in 2019. Potential, however, is B+. Now, that might be a bit of a strange one. How can you give them such high potential but have them out of the top 8? Any team that's coached by Wayne Bennett, and especially the Brisbane Broncos, who are so used to finals football, this is the side, if I was to pick any in this bottom list that were to make the top 8, and it wouldn't surprise me, it would be the Broncos. They definitely have the potential to. And star players, again, B+, they've got a lot of stars. It's just whether the impending leave of Wayne Bennett and how bad that affects the club and the club's culture, most important. 10th place, I've gone with the West Tigers. Now, I know if you're a regular viewer of my content, especially over on Instagram, you will see I did tip them for a top 8 multiple times within my previous Q&As. However, I've just gone through, obviously, very thoroughly today and prepared all this, and sadly, I don't see the Tigers quite making the cut. For depth, I've gone with B+. They've got a lot of great young forwards and a couple of backs that can come in if required due to injury. Potential, I've gone with a B, and that's because they have signed Michael Maguire from the former South Sydney Rabbitohs coach, who, as we all know, is a premiership winner. However, stars, I've given them a C. Benji Marshall and Robbie Farah are great players, but I just don't know if they're enough to take the Tigers into a top 8 finish. Factor in also Moses Mbye at fullback. He was great for the Bulldogs, didn't exactly fit in great at the Tigers. Still had a good year, still finished strong, but wasn't as strong as he was with the Bulldogs. And I think that's due to team cohesion and chemistry, which is something the Tigers may struggle with again, especially with another change of head coach. Okay guys, so number 11, I've gone with the Manly Sea Eagles. Now, I've given them a C+ for depth. Again, like a couple of other sides, the Eagles have enough depth to cover some injuries, but not the greatest depth when we look overall at the NRL. For potential, I've given them a B-. Now, they have former coach Des Hasler returning to the club, who has obviously previously seen a large amount of success there. And his inclusion could be massive and could spark a very special season from the Sea Eagles. However, I'm not 100% convinced that is the case. We look at star players now, and I've given them a B+ there. We look at a spine of potentially Tom Trbojevic, Kane Elgey, Daly Cherry Evans, and Api Coruscant. That is very strong. That will be on the back of Adam Fanua Blake, Martin Tapau, Curtis Siren, and Joel Thompson, and Jake Trbojevic. A very powerful forward pack. At 12th place now, guys, we have the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Now, I know you're looking at me and you're saying, how can you have them at 12? But hear me out. The slide that we have seen occur from the Dragons at the past couple of seasons, where last season they went from 1st all the way to 8th, there is nothing to suggest that this won't occur again. Factor in, if they don't have a great and a strong start like they did last year, then they definitely miss the top 8. Factor in again, I believe their depth is even weaker this year than last year, and I've given them a C- there. And I believe that continues to be the Dragons' problem when it comes to consistent football throughout the year. One factor from that is the progressive fatigue. These players aren't getting a rest after State of Origin. They're not getting rests throughout the year. They're not getting games off because there's the lack of competition for spots. And that's also the mental factor side of things. Players know, I'm going to get picked week in, week out because there's no younger or there's no players pushing for my spot. And I believe that will continue to be the Dragons' problem. Potential, C+. Like I said, if they don't get that strong start like they had last year, then we will see the Dragons struggle to make finals football. Stars, B-. I think that's fair. I think they do have the right stars, and they definitely are capable of making the top 8 with a B- ranking there, but I don't see it occurring for the previous reasons I just discussed. Okay guys, this one pains my heart, but I wanted to give you guys an unbiased, a fair, and the best product I could. So I've had to put my mighty Gold Coast Titans at 13th towards the bottom, which really sucks, but I have given us an A minus for depth. I do believe this is the best side we've ever had in our club's existence, but I've only rated our potential as C plus because we have a lot of new recruits incoming. I believe it will take a while for us to gel and a while to sort of form that club culture. I don't believe this will happen in 1 year, but with the signing of Mal Meninga, the Australian Kangaroos coach, as our head of performance and culture, I do see it happening very soon, and I do see us challenging for the title within the next couple of years. For stars, I've gone with B minus here. We have a lot of great stars throughout our lineup. When our players do play State of Origin this year, we've got a lot of great players in reserve grade that can step up and have a big game. Add in as well, we've also got players like Bryce Cartwright and Leilani Latu, who whilst they might not have played their best footy in 2018, they are certainly capable of some very, very impressive games. 14th, I've gone with the Canterbury Bulldogs, and I know the Bulldogs have some of the most passionate fans, so I expect you guys to come after me upon seeing this video, and I completely understand that. As I said before, rugby league is built on passion, and we all love our teams very much. For depth, I've given the Bulldogs a C. They have players that are capable of playing first grade, but not obviously breaking the house down. Potential, again, a C. It's only Dean Pay's second year within the NRL. We haven't seen what he's fully capable as a head coach. And with the departure of David Clemmer, if they don't secure Dylan Napa as his replacement, then I believe they will very, very heavily struggle. Even if Dylan Napa is to replace Clemmer, he doesn't quite have the output that Dave has, and that is going to be missed so terribly by the Bulldogs up the middle. Stars, D+. Really, there's not too many great talents on that team. Okay guys, 15th now. I don't want to say this, but I have to say the Parramatta Eels, I don't see any great improvement throughout 2019. For depth there, I've given them a C+, not the worst depth in the NRL, slightly better than average. Potential, now I have given them a B-, which I'm sure you're thinking is a little too high for a team that sits 15th. However, given the fact that multiple players within that roster have been told, we do not want you anymore, this is your last year with us, if you can find someone now, we'll let you go, but if not, we won't be offering you a new contract essentially. The Eels are going to have up to $4 million next year to spend, which I think really shows how many players have been told that. Those players have something to play for. They have to play for their future. So there is the potential for the Eels to turn up and have a very successful year. Factor in 2017, they were a top 4 side, I believe. If not, they played finals football and they played into the semis. So there is the potential there, but I just don't see it happening. I see 2019 being very ugly for the Eels, and star players, C- there. Again, not many stars throughout their roster. Okay guys, now for my wooden spoon tip, I'm going to have to say the Canberra Raiders, and I know you Raiders fans don't want to hear that, but for depth, I'm going to have to give you guys a D. Your depth in 2019, from what I can see on the team list, is well below other NRL teams. If you guys have any significant injuries, I think it will be very, very dangerous, especially with star winger Jordan Rapana not expected back until round 11. Potential here, now I've gone with a C-. Again, I think if Ricky Stuart was the head coach of any other NRL team and they miss the finals as much as you guys have of recent, he would have been sacked. And that's nothing personal against Ricky. Ricky's a very nice guy and he's always been very nice every time I've met him. But that's just my opinion, and I think that was shown also with him being sacked from previous clubs. Now let's look at star players. C-. Again, not too many stars throughout that roster. Certainly not one huge star player. But yeah, I'd see 2019 being a pretty ugly year for the Raiders. And unfortunately, I do see it as Ricky Stuart's last year as their head coach. Alright guys, that is going to wrap up my complete overview and 2019 NRL ladder prediction. This was a highly requested video from my Instagram, so I do hope you enjoyed. Just quickly guys, no bullshit here. This video was sponsored by Tara Constable Arbonne. That's my girlfriend's new business Basically, what she's developed is a program that focuses on lifestyle changes with huge results that have been visible from some of her clients after just 30 days. Now, I understand the predominant viewer base here is male, but guys, this is a great Christmas present or a great present idea for your wife, partner, or loved one. We can get you packages up to 40% off. So follow the instructions on screen, go to my girlfriend's Instagram, and get yourselves a great bargain and change your life today.
This shit gets stoned. I take your eyes to see the moon. Take your body to the